Hello there and welcome back to Four Times in a Podcast. You join us on the 30th of July and we are finally here for our long-awaited season preview of the 25-26 season. So it's myself, Darren. I'm delighted to be joined by Tony, Danny and Andy as usual, and we are just going to take a look at this season, what our hopes and dreams are for Celtic, and talk about how achievable we think our hopes are. Celtic obviously were within a penalty shootout of winning a treble last year, also had a good Champions League campaign where we in seconds of taking Bayern Munich to extra time, so a lot to sort of build on. Also be difficult to maybe reach that level again, especially with some key players leaving over the last 12 months, like Matt O'Reilly, Nicholas Kuhn, Kyogo, especially with some of them not replaced as we're recording. So Tony, I'll come at you. Last season was a bit of a mixed bag. Obviously we won the league in pretty convincing fashion. I think it was close to 20 points in the end we won it by. Obviously the cups were a tale of two penalty shootouts. We won the League Cup against Rangers in December on penalties, and then that other cup final sort of saw the season end on a bit of a sour note with Aberdeen winning the Scottish Cup against us on penalties. So as we sort of just are a few days away from the opening league game, how do you sort of approach this season, both in terms of how Celtic are prepared, and I think it would be ignorant to ignore the fact there has been a bit of massive upheaval over the road that may affect how challenged we are this season?
Aye, well, I think, first of all, you always look in-house and we're weaker. We're getting into the first game of the season, and I think our wing options are Maida, Forrest, Tillio and Yang, which I think is really insulting to the Celtic fans for the amount of money we've put in, the amount of money Celtic have, the fact that we've sold Nicholas Kuhn for such vast amounts quite a while ago now, and the fact that we're getting into the first game of the season. Let me just repeat, our options are Maida, Forrest, Tillio and Yang. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. I seen Rangers for the first time tonight. I thought they looked really poor. I thought they were taking a lot of risks at the back. They've obviously changed their style of play under Martin, but irrespective, it's a feel good for them. They've went away for home, tough venue, and they've got a draw, and they've qualified for the next round. So I give them a boost. I said before, football's all about moments. It's a big moment for them, getting past a tough qualifier, Panathinaikos. So I think they're continuing to strengthen in terms of Mikey Moore. Again, don't know enough about him. I know he was played quite a bit under Big Ange, where he was signed by Big Ange anyway, sorry. So yeah, I think you can only... Our fan base, we're either like us, where we can criticise the club but still love the club. I don't think anybody here is going, I hope Celtic lose or want to get proven right so much. I want Celtic to win every game they play, and I want to be proven wrong when it comes to my predictions for this season. But then you have other fans who just erupt whenever they see any criticism of Celtic. They think you're a hun in disguise. They think you're just believing paper talk. They think everybody's lying about the club. Everything's just nonsense, and our board no valuations for everybody else's players, and we should just trust them and everything. So that's the kind of the two people you get. But that's been going on forever. I mean, that's always been the thing where some people just hate the idea of Celtic being criticised because for whatever reason they're scared the Huns might jump on it or whatever. But I think you can only be truthful. And at the moment, we're no best equipped to win the league. We knew at the end of January we were going to need a striker. We needed another centre-half. We probably need a backup right-back, and we need a strong midfielder that can tackle. It looks as though we might get the lone boy from Man City, which is not really that exciting in terms of there's no option to buy. We've got a striker in terms of Yamada, but we don't know an awful lot about him. He's not exactly proven. Right back, we haven't got anybody. It's just Johnson and Ralston, and then a strong midfielder. I don't think that's happened yet. I think Negren's more an attacking midfielder for what I've heard. So we've known what we needed. We've known since probably a long time that Kuhn was leaving, and I've decided not to sign any wingers. So for me, I just don't understand this desire to put yourself in hopeless situations. Obviously, the go-ahead Eagles guy, the story is we're just refusing to meet their valuation. I actually seen a comment on Facebook that says they wanted, I think, $1 million for him in January, but now they want 6. I'm going, but if you'd have said to us how much Kuhn was worth in the summer last year, we'd probably say it's about 100 grand, and then by the time it got to the January, he was worth 15-20 million. So the clubs are allowed to adjust their values of players, but I think that's it. I think we've been made a bit of a laughing stock in terms of it's been leaked out that clubs are laughing at the offers. I mean, people must see the phone ringing and go, "Oh, fuck, is that Michael Nicholson phoning just fucking put it to voicemail, you know. So I think as it stands now, I think their tails will be up, albeit they don't look very good in my opinion. And I don't know the overall consensus. For what I've seen on Facebook and speaking to people, a lot of people I know are absolutely disgusted at the Celtic board and have a real dislike, and that's putting it very mildly, towards them and the way they're acting. That's not a recipe for success when you have a large group of season ticket holders who really are getting fed up of this constant incompetence when it comes to transfer windows and excuses, etc. So I can only say what I see, and at the minute I think we're ill-equipped, especially in the wings. I think we've got some good players, don't get me wrong, I think we've got a good manager, but I think we're setting ourselves up for... I says after the cup final, it was a punch in the face. I think we're setting ourselves up for a fucking massive knockout, the way we're acting.
Andy, I'll bring you in. Obviously, since we've been about as a podcast, these previews have been pretty easy for us. We've always been pretty confident in Celtic's ability, and it was just a sort of these became prediction shows where we would just sort of try and describe how we think Celtic will win a treble. I think expectations are maybe a wee bit tempered this year. Just I don't know if it's just kind of how last season ended or how the transfer window's gone, etc. What's your sort of thoughts going into it? Like, it could be Brendan Rodgers' final season as a Celtic manager for the second time, or he may well extend. You never know. But how do you think this season's looking? Just days away from it kicking off competitively.
I think that a lot of the seasons, obviously we've been doing this a while now, I can't even fucking remember how many seasons it's been, but a lot of the time we've had, obviously this is Rodgers' second spell, but like his first time round, like, you had that confidence in him, and then obviously we were a bit reserved with Angie's first season with predictions and stuff like that, but again, second season we knew exactly what we had, and that gives you confidence. And obviously there's like, no every window's the same, and there's been times before we've been disappointed, times we've maybe been a bit more optimistic, but I think the issue, particularly this season, is that we've seen this movie before, and I don't want to go and just fucking say verbatim what we said in the episode prior, but I think that's the big fear, and like, as Tony covered, like, ultimately we just want to see the best Celtic that can be put on the field that season or that game or whatever it might be. We just want to see the best possible Celtic play the best possible football and win every single week. Granted, no possible no team fucking wins week in, week out, no matter who they're playing. That's fine. But all we want to see is ultimately put ourselves in the position to improve. We want to come out of the window stronger than we go in it. That's always our goal. That's always what we ask for. And we just want to see competence. Like, no every signing's going to work out. No everything's going to work out, and you can't guarantee success anyway, but you can certainly put yourself in a better position to try and secure it. Like, that's why successful teams are successful. That's why, like, teams, if you're in a similar stature and stuff like that, outperform us on the continent. And I think that's what factors into a lot of this. And it's a frustration, and I think sort of a lot of what Tony says is right, that's where the frustration is directed at the board at this point. And, like, when it does eventually blow up, when we end up fucking perhaps out of Europe or making an arse of ourselves in a European game or fucking, God forbid, losing the league or something like that, like, it falls on them. But these things don't just happen like overnight. You don't just go for a team who are fucking close to putting Bayern Munich or taking Bayern Munich into extra time in a playoff tie, playing some really good stuff, really good football at times. You don't just become a shadow of that. Like, that doesn't just fall away, and you don't just lose confidence. It's our time. It's like we all knew, people were speaking the minute after that game, January window or anything else. I couldn't away. But apparently, our boardroom and scouting department are the only people who never seen that coming, which I don't believe for a second. Just ill-equipped to replace him. Kyogo, you could argue we've still not really replaced him. We've maybe taken two punts now and a stab in the dark, but we all said they needed replacing the January window, never happened. Like, you could list so many players, so many positions where we feel ill-equipped and that players don't get replaced, and like, ultimately that comes to a head at a point. There comes a stage where that comes back to bite you. That's what happens. You can tart it up however you want, but that's what happens. And I think as has been spoken about, some Celtic fans just don't accept that. They don't accept that any criticism of the club. They don't accept any criticism of the board. They see a positive balance sheet. They're so haunted by what happened to Rangers that they would rather we just spend 500 grand in every single signing that we'll bring in going forward, and we'll just be a wee bit better than they are, and that's what they care about. But aye, it's frustrating, darling, and it's horrible to be getting into, like you say, we sat down to do a preview the other day and never previewed a bit of the season at all because we were all just fucking wanting to vent our anger at the calamity of a transfer window that we've had so far. And you might come to the end date and the window shuts and you make X amount of signings in the final day of the window, but there can be a bit of damage done to your season before that. Like we've got games about to start coming thick and fast, and we're all still a bit weary because we know how underprepared we are. Like, it looks favourable, if you want to put it like that, in terms of your playoff for the Champions League. But many times we've seen that before, and like the draw isn't so favourable. And again, like if you make a poor start to the season, then you're chasing that right away, and then you're hoping that the rest of the league is as poor as ever. But there will come a time where they try and improve, they try and sort of push you, and it's just you're making it more an uphill task for yourself, and ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, like, we just want to see progress. We want to see us try and improve, and that it seems like the fans are the only people at this point in time associated with the club who want that, and the only people that are pushing for that. But I've actually went way off track now, and I forgot what the fuck I was going to talk about. But it's frustrating, Dan. I think that's the big thing, and it's because it's a familiar story and it's something we've seen before, and we've seen the good and the bad of it. We've seen us go into seasons underprepared and make an arse of it, and we've seen us get away with it because the standards of the rest of the league and the people who are challengers isn't up to it. But that's not always going to be the case.
Aye, that's true. As I think you've mentioned, there's that chance if the teams round about us all improve a couple of percent and we don't, then how big is the gap going to be between us and them? Danny will bring you in. Obviously, as I said, ultimately, like, win the league and cup doubles. Never going to be seen as anything but a successful season. We also had a good European campaign, but getting into this season, what would you like to see from Celtic? Obviously, we started last season on fire for about the first 6 months, but then there obviously was a lot of disappointing domestic performances. I'm thinking like Ibrox in the new year, losing to St Johnstone, losing to Easter Road as well. It was a bit stop-start in terms of domestic form in the second half of the season. What you thinking going into this campaign?
I think it'll be much more of the same. I mean, not much has changed since the end of the season. We've made a few, I think we've only really made one material, maybe two material signings to change the team in Tierney and Nigan. But I don't know, I've not seen too much of pre-season. I thought, so I couldn't say, oh, it looks like they're going to try and do this year or move the ball quicker, or maybe they're going to try playing it down the channels or whatever, I don't know. What would I like to see? I'd like to see us start this season like we did last. I thought last season was a good season. I think we were a wee bit spoilt's the wrong word, but I think we got a wee bit used to the high level of performance in the first kind of 6 months of the season, especially some of the players like Kuhn and Maeda. I know Maeda did a good season the whole season. I thought Kuhn kind of fell off a bit of a cliff in the second half of the season, but we were spoiled by how good these players were at the start of the season. The team was playing really well. Some of the stuff we were playing first kind of 6 months of the season up until that Bayern game was really good, and the season did kind of fall away in the end, and the cup final was probably a kind of prime example of that, what happened to us in the cup final. But again, I still believe in the manager. I do think the manager will leave at the end of the season. I think that I kind of would be very pleasantly surprised if he signed a new contract instead, but I think he will go at the end of the season, and I'd like to think that would give him the motivation to, bring the team together again for another tilt at the title and kind of play like the way we played at the start of the season, keep that going for the whole season. I know that's pretty difficult when it's quite obvious now looking back that the motivation fell out the team when they get put out of the Champions League. It was because the league was won every time Rangers beat us, they ended up further behind us. So I could see that, and then they kind of rose their effort for the cup games, but the final just seemed to be a game too far. I'd like to see us play well for longer. Obviously, it seems kind of obvious to say, but like as the other two boys have said, it's at the minute it looks like we're not quite. Well, the squad's absolutely not where we need it to be. I still think first 11 we've got the best first 11 in the country, and I think if everybody in that first 11's playing well, we will play. We'll win lots of games by lots of goals, and we'll play really well. But it's over the long course of a season. If a squad, I know you've got the January window on that as well, but if a squad was to be where it's got to be, the now going into January, you would, you could be getting to November, December, praying that January comes so you can sign 4 or 5 players to maybe save the day. So I hope it doesn't come to that and we get the bodies in before then.
Aye, exactly. I think it would be pretty poor if we were still having to look to try and rescue the season or chase a title down by spending the money in January. Obviously, as we're recording, still just over a month for the transfer window to go, and hopefully I'm sure Celtic will sign a few more players, but it needs to be quality because, as I said at the start, I think from 12 months ago we're particularly weaker than we were, and look, a few of the new signings that maybe weren't the headline grabbers at the time when they were announced, they might come in and just set their form on fire and become heroes, which would be great. But I think we really do need to get some movement going in the transfer front. Obviously, I agree with you, Danny. I think it is Brendan Rodgers last season, and I know a lot of people. It seemed to, like, the second half of last season, people were saying, he's only got a year ago. What's the point in him staying if he's just got to leave? I don't understand why it's became such a big deal. He came in, he signed a 3-year deal. The 3 years was obviously what was agreed, what was the plan. Like, I know generally Celtic managers who are the last sort of 20 years or so have had that sort of rolling contract, the 12-month rolling contract, but when Rodgers came back, I thought he's here for 3 years. Be great if he's here longer, but when you put a sort of number on it, then I don't think it would be a surprise if he says he's leaving at the end of the season, and I don't think people should be making as big a deal about it. But I do think it will sort of have a significance in him being absolutely desperate to bring another title back to Celtic Park. We spoke about it on the last episode, how Rodgers is probably back just to try and heal his reputation with as many Celtic fans as he can. The last thing he's going to want is to leave with Celtic no as champions, so he'll be. I think it will come into play at one point. It's so tough because obviously that it was a bit disjointed towards the end of the season, obviously culminating in that Scottish Cup defeat, but I think that's more to do with we need to improve the squad, because you obviously look at towards the end of the season, we suffered serious injuries to Jota and Hatate, and when they two went out of the team, like that Scottish Cup final, mainly, like you just seen how little creativity we had. But it's not just up to them. There's been players like Adam Eden and Arne Engels who they've been there. Eda's been there a year and a half. Engels has been there a full year now. I think they've got to look to kick on from what they done last season. And I'm not a critic of they two. Like, I know they did take a lot of stick last season, but I think for young enough guys, they performed relatively well, played well in Europe. So I think there's more to come, definitely, from both of them. But I think that they'll be looking to really put their stamp on this team and become the sort of main men of the team. And I just think we can't have that same position where we did, where one or two players get injured, which is likely to happen over the course of the season, and the wheels sort of come off, because it's just. I agree with what Anies says about, I think on paper in the country we've got the strongest starting 11 by a mile, but you're not going to have that starting 11 available to you all season, whether it be like we lost Schmeichel for parts of the last season, Carter Vickers has had his injury problems, Tierney we're hoping's going to be fit for as much of the season as possible, but there's always a chance that that might not be the case. And then obviously, like I say, Hatai getting injured, and then all the way through, like, Maeda's had a few injuries since he's been here as well, so you obviously can't count on your strongest 11 being available every week, especially with the amount of games we do play over the course of the 4 competitions we'll be playing in. Tony, I'll come back to you on Europe. It was obviously a successful campaign. We started with that brilliant win over Bratislava last season, had a bit of a reality check against Dortmund, but then after that we were really mature in the campaign and only lost one more game in the league phase to Aston Villa. Conceded very few goals after that as well. Obviously this season's a bit different from the last year where we've had automatic entry. We do have one qualifier to play, so it's no guaranteed what European competition we're going to be playing in this year. How do you sort of see that going? Obviously the draw's on the 4th of August, this Monday. Celtic will be drawn against either Sturm Graz, Basel, Karabag or Skandia, Dynamo Kiev or Paphos, or Slovan Bratislava or Kairat Almaty. So first of all, what European competition do you think Celtic will be playing in, and how do you think they'll cope?
I think we should get in the Champions League, but we've hardly been the best at Champions League qualifiers over the years. For some real shockers, thinking back to Lennon and Dyla and even AEK Athens under Brendan as well. So I'd like to think we can get into the Champions League. When you list 8 teams there, to be honest, I'm glad we're not playing Maccabi Tel Aviv. I think that would have been a recipe for disaster. I think your board would probably have made an even bigger show of themselves than usual, so I was glad to see them get fucked it. Shouldn't even be in the competition. But anyway, I digress. No, I think we'll probably get in, but I wouldn't be overly confident because, again, I just think we're weaker. I find it quite incredible that we haven't tried to get the settled squad in for this point to be as in strong a position as possible for this qualifier, which is going to be worth so much money, which is really what Celtic are all about, making money. So quite strange that they haven't decided to back the manager, the successful Champions League manager for Celtic, if you can call him that. I suppose the success has been very limited, but he had a good go at last year and he's been good at navigating qualifiers in the past. So, look, if anybody's going to navigate it and get us through, I would trust Brendan. I would trust him for the season, but I just don't think he's getting the help required. And if I was him, I wouldn't be signing a new deal either. But I think we'll get into the Champions League, and once we get there, I think I'll be hiding behind the couch.
Andy, what about you? I think out of the 4 of us probably watch more European football than the other 3. You obviously may know when we draw a team or get linked to a player, you've got quite a good knowledge about them. Is there any of the teams that are listed that you think could stand in our way of Champions League qualification, or do you expect Celtic to make the league phase again?
I think more often than not in these things, it's usually Celtic gets thrown in Celtic's way, as we've seen. I mean, ultimately, you've got to look at them all and think, oh, winnable ties, and we should be winning them. Like, the performance last year. Like, if you want to say, obviously, all the teams, like when the Champions League finished last season, you're going to play Celtic in a playoff, they wouldn't fancy it because it would be seen as a difficult tie. Now, what transpires since then is obviously we are currently going in underprepared and with a worse squad than we played previously. Like if it's Bratislava again, like we've now, you would argue, got a weaker squad than we originally obviously played them and turned them out. But I think even so, we should be looking to beat any of them. If we're serious and the club are serious about obviously sort of getting back to that level and consistently being at that level. These need to be the ties that I absolutely take them seriously and try to treat them with the respect that they deserve, but nothing short of a disgrace if you don't go and win them. So I'm no overly worried about it, and I think there's a lot to be said for. It's probably faith in the manager, and that factors into a lot of obviously going to the season and domestically and stuff like that. What my thoughts on that, but I think none of the teams overly worry me. It would only be sort of Celtic and Celtic's incompetence. If we were to lose even more players or lose a couple of freak injuries beforehand, because I don't quite think we've got the depth but to deal with that at the minute. Obviously we've spoken about it before, but look, while Tierney's an improvement on Greg Taylor, if Tierney gets injured, we don't have another left back technically. Obviously, we know the boys came in Namura, who's a centre half, but like, I would argue Taylor and Schlupp were a stronger sort of set of two than Namura and Tierney. But that goes across the board. Obviously, Tony's been through the wingers already. Look, those are the sort of things that will hurt us. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. And as I say, I've got a lot of faith in Rodgers to deal with that tie. And I think my concerns are more so what would happen after that if things don't improve and we go in and play some real right good teams. Then that's when the concerns will come in. But I'm not overly worried about the playoff turn. Other than what fucking price the board will make up to take half a season ticket holders now. But that's by the by.
I come with you there, obviously. Drew Falkirk in the League Cup as well, so it's a double done for the home cup scheme this month, which isn't something to look forward to. But Daniel, just coming to you in Europe, as I mentioned, a good campaign last year. We're seconds away from taking Bayern Munich to extra time, but we've got a qualifier to navigate this time. Would you expect Celtic to be able to navigate it? Any teams that worry you? I know it makes me feel ancient even saying this, but I think 23 years ago Basel came to Celtic Park in a Champions League qualifier and put us out. Well, didn't put us out in Celtic Park, they put us out in the second leg in Switzerland. But would you be worried that Xherdan Shaqiri and Albion Ayeti could rock up and do the same again?
I think I don't know where Andy's getting his confidence there. I do think we'll qualify for the Champions League, but any of the teams you listed, we've got a shocker in us against every one of them, especially away from home. So it's not quite all done yet. I remember that Basel tie, they were a right good team. They ended up getting to the last 16 of the Champions League that year, although it was they got to the second group stage. I think they beat Man United and all that year, or Liverpool, one of the two, and lost the other one, but they were a good team. We ended up getting a European final with that season as well, so I'll take a repeat of that, but I've got to say something controversial. I actually think we would fare better in the Europa League. I want to be in the Champions League. That's where the money is, that's where the prestige is. You're only going to get better, theoretically, playing against better teams all the time. So I'd love to be in the Champions League. I think we'd be better off in the Europa League against teams that are more at our kind of level. Having said that, the state of the club now really can't have, like, we couldn't really do with another bad news story of going out the fucking Europa League, so going out the Champions League. So for that, I hope we quite. I want to be in the Champions League, but I just, back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, if we go out, it's not really that fucking big a deal because we should actually cope better in the Europa League considering the teams that are in it. There's no Champions League drop downs anymore, so you're in and out. Having said that, last year we got a relatively favourable draw. We were brilliant in the Champions League last year. We were really, really good. We've had draws in the past that we haven't capitalised on and stuff like that. So last year we were great, but we did get a fair draw. I don't think we'll get the same this year. And I think we'll be one of the teams in the things at the bottom 12 that just go straight out. And I think that'll be us. Cause especially consider squad. Because like last year when Bayern beat us, if you'd asked me what I think next season, I'd be like, well, obviously I want to see us come on and progress and do even better next year and win that playoff tie and get into the last 16. But they've not prepared us for it. So I'm kind of hopeful. I'm expecting us to get through. Although I'm a bit wary of the tie, and then it'll probably be like Tony said, we'll be behind the couch for eight weeks, and I think there's a real chance that they go out with very few points.
Aye, I'm probably leaning towards it as well. I expect us to navigate the qualifier. I think that, look, as I mentioned, I think we have a strong starting 11. They've obviously got good Champions League experience in there now as well, and the manager has plenty of experience in Champions League as well. And obviously, I know Slovan's one of the teams we could get, but I think last season was a bit of a turning point where a team like that came to Celtic Park and we just absolutely set about them. That would be great to do again. But look, there's tough ties. Like we're all old enough to have seen Celtic lose ties that they shouldn't have, and whether it be Cluj or Maribor or anybody like that. And like, Andy says that there's only Celtic that can get in Celtic's way at times, and if we were to fail to qualify, then I think it's a bit of an open secret on here that a few of us wouldn't mind a wee bash at the Europa League. Obviously, there's no drop down anymore from the Champions League, so if you were to go in it would be by losing a qualifier. And after that Dortmund game last year, I became a bit numb to the Champions League, and I know it improved after that, but I was a bit, as I say, numb to how the Champions League didn't excite me, and like the money the Celtic get from it doesn't go back in my pocket, and a lot of time it doesn't get reinvested on the pitch as well. So if anything, it costs me more money because they charge more for the Champions League than the Europa League. So when it bothered me one bit if we ended up in the Europa League, obviously I'd hate to see Celtic out in sort of embarrassing fashion against one of the teams, and it's entirely possible that would happen. But as I say, I think the fact the squad's in relatively okay health at the moment, as long as we don't get any injuries before the qualifier, I'd expect us to navigate it. Obviously, I'd probably prefer Celtic to be at home the second leg, just you're almost guaranteed a sellout, and if you're needing to get out of the line, then there's very few venues in Europe that will give you the backing to do that than the Celtic Park crowd when it's on form. So hopefully we can get there. As I say, after points in last season's Champions League, I wanted to write it off, but then that Bayern game inspired me, and it showed that on our day we can go toe-to-toe with anybody. So it'd be good to see us get back there. I know, but we got a lot of shit from people because a lot of teams we played ended up in the sort of bottom third of the draw. But I think when you looked at it, like Dortmund were Champions League finalists, Atalanta were Europa League winners. When we played Leipzig, they were second in the Bundesliga at the time. There was plenty of decent teams. We get Aston Villa from pot 4 as well, which was about as tough as it could be. And then, like, you could argue Bratislava and like Zagreb and Young Boys were more manageable games, but I think that we showed ourselves well last year. I do have slight concerns that if we were to get a sort of tougher looking draw, it could be a long campaign, but it all depends. It's in Celtic's hands. We've got a month to get more bodies in as well. I hope to God we're not waiting to see what competition we're in, because it just reeks that we'd then turn around and say, oh, these players go to the Champions League, let's just give them a chance at it. We've already got the money banked, but nothing would surprise me. So it'll be interesting to see how we do. Obviously, we've passed our predictions to each other. We'll keep them for me, because a lot of listeners liked that last year where we sort of read them out. I'll give you a hint though, they're not as positive as they usually are. So in May time, a few of us might be right. Hopefully we're all laughing at each other's terrible predictions when Celtic's toasting our treble. Just before we wrap up, we do have that St Mirren game on Sunday, so we're going to go around the houses and get quick predictions from everybody. Tony, I'll come to you first. It's Flag Day at Celtic Park. I believe you're over for it and looking forward to it. Are you expecting a performance to merit the occasion?
Yeah, I think we're going to draw one each. I know there'll be people listening to this going, oh, fuck this, I'm fed up listening to these depressing bastards. I just have a cunty feeling for the full season, and I think there's a chance we could get off to a really stupid start. I'm sorry, I can't shake it, and I can't even be arsed lying. I've had one each in my head for about 3 weeks, so I think it'll be one each. I think we'll take the lead. St Mirren will equalise, and we can all hold hands and sing Sack the Board at the top of our lungs.
Oh, well, it was one each on final day of the season last year, so you never know. Andy, what you expecting from it?
Right. I don't want to be a total doom and gloom merchant, but I'll go positive. I'll say we'll start off and we'll win 3-0. I was honestly going to predict scorers there, and usually it's Coons and Jotas and all the rest of it, but I think it will be pretty for the start of the season. We'll be pretty reliant on one or two people in the team, so I'm going to say Engels will get a goal and Ida will score two, and a 3-0 win.
That's a bit more positive than Tony's then. And Danny, what are you expecting from it? I know you've not watched much of pre-season, so who are you looking forward to seeing in this team?
I'm actually going to the game. It's the first time I've been to a flag day since 2007 when we drew on each week of Marnock. Tony will be delighted here. So I've got forum for that. Looking forward to seeing Nygren. I don't know if he'll start or not. I'd like to see him in the team. Mankey might actually play off the right, but and Maeda off the left, Maeda through the middle. But I think he'll probably be used more centrally as the season goes on. But I'd like to see him and obviously Tierney as well. You know, I've seen the goals for pre-season. Like his cross for that goal against Newcastle was brilliant. And if we can get Ida on the end of some of the crosses off season, who knows? We might be in for a good season. But I think we'll beat St Mirren. I think the players will kind of rise to the occasion. I don't think it'll be sparkling fit, but I think it'll be 2-0, and I think Ida will get the bay for them. But I think it'll be kind of long slog at times. But I think we'll pull away at the end and start the season in good nick.
I sort of think we will be pretty good on Sunday as well. As I say, I think the strongest 11 we've got available to us now is pretty good, and I think St Mirren will be a tough game. They obviously just missed out in Europe last season, so they'll be looking to rectify that. They'll take confidence from their performance on Trophy Day last season when they were minutes away from beating us before James Forrest equalised that day. I think we'll play well. I think it'll be a nice Sunday afternoon. I won't be there. I'm actually in Croatia this weekend, so I'll be looking for somewhere to watch it and hopefully watch a number of goals. I think it'll be 3-1 to Celtic, and as I mentioned, I think guys like Adam Ida are going to have to step up. I think they will just hand him the jersey from the start of this season. I know there's been a lot of talk about will it be Daisy Maeda through the middle, Yamada, but I find they're going to just go with Ida and just give him the first block of games. Say, just give him the jersey and it's his to lose. And I think he's going to get a hat-trick. And I know I've backed him for top scorer bets and whatnot, but that's not completely influencing my prediction. I just think that he's got a point to prove this season, and I fancy him to do it. I'll go for him to get a hat-trick, and I don't know, Mark O'Hara or somebody to get a consolation for St Mirren. But
if anybody is listening, just get used to the positive Ida predictions all season long.
Aye, definitely, and it'll be a very happy podcast if they come true, I'm sure. But aye, there you go. Free is at least predicted a win on Sunday. Tony going for a draw. We'll be back at some point next week discussing that. We'll obviously have the Champions League draw to actually preview as well. Maybe look a bit more in depth at who we've drawn and how tough a tie it'll be. But aye, if you've taken the time to listen, I know it's our second episode this week, so I appreciate you coming back. It's slightly more positive. We weren't completely ranting and raving for 40 minutes this time, but it's up to Celtic what they do in the next month, whether that's going to continue. So aye, thanks for coming back and listening. We do appreciate it. Make sure you're following 4 Times a Podcast wherever you get your social media, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And we will speak to you next week, hopefully discussing a successful flag day for Celtic. And aye, hail hail.